What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Priscilla. I'm a Nigerian women's wear designer based in the UK. In this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to make the pattern for a lovely silk, is it silk? It's a combination of chiffon and silk slip dress is what I have on right now. The fabric I'm using is from Yemzi. It's a really nice soft chiffon that I have to say, if you're working with soft fabrics like chiffon, silk, satin, just make sure you have the right size of needle because they usually require like a fine needle so it doesn't like create big in your garment. Also be sure that the fabric doesn't have any static energy, and what that means is it doesn't stick to your skin. The pattern comes first and then the sewing as well. If you want to see how I made this dress, make sure to keep on watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy these sort of pattern and sewing projects, and leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to join the DIY fam. It's the exclusive club when you get updates every single week whenever I have new videos on the channel. All links to my social medias will be down below, and let's jump straight into the video. Starting out with the patterns, I'm going to be working with the following tools to create the dress design. I have my layout here. I got myself my pattern master, which I'll be needing especially for its curved ends. I have my scissors, pencil, marker pen, eraser, as well as my tape measure to take down measurements. I also have my basic bodice, which I'll be linking down below for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, as well as a long ruler. I also got 2 meters of chiffon fabric provided by Yemzi. I have 2 meters of black lining and 3 meters of bias tape. Just remember to decide on how long you want the dress to be, as well as how deep you want the neckline on the front and on the back to be as well. So first up, I went ahead to duplicate and lengthen my patterns. So tracing off my basic bodice around the neck, shoulder, side, transferring my darts as well. I made the dress 86 centimeters or 34 inches long, which is just around my knee. You can decide to make yours a bit longer or shorter, just to your preference. So I repeated the same thing for the back, tracing out all necessary points and making it longer as well. For the spread, I just made it a simple A-line silhouette. You can decide to make yours pencil. Just remember that because there's not going to be any way to get into this dress, you sort of have to make the bottom a bit wider to allow you get in and out of the dress. Remember to create your center back dart as well as cancel out the side dart on your back panels because we'd not be using those. So next up, we're going to be adding a bust dart on the front panel, so that adds a little bit of fit on the dress along the front. So I'm just taking my tape measure and I'm measuring along the bust line, and I'm marking 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters away from the bust point, and I'm going to mark 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters down the side, and we're going to be drawing in a bust dart. This is going to help to shape sort of that area of the dress when you have it on, because it's a very loose silhouette, so you want a little bit of fit where necessary. Next up, I'm going inwards by 1 centimeters into the waist because we're going to be ignoring the front dart of this dress. Hardly do bias cut dresses ever have darts anywhere. It's just meant to sort of skim over your body in a very loose and relaxed manner. So once that is done, we'll go ahead to design our neckline. You have the freedom to create whatever neckline you want to. I'm just going to make a simple V-shaped neckline today. And the first thing I'm doing is I'm dropping the center front neckline by 8 centimeters to 2.5 inches. And then I'm marking 8 centimeters or 3 inches down the front arm curve and connecting them together to make my V-shaped neckline. Next up, I'm going to be making the armhole a bit deeper by 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches, so it just sort of comes into the body a little bit more. I'm just going ahead to transfer my arm curve notch, and that is going to be our neckline, our new arm curve, as well as our new front side seam. So for the back, I wanted the back neckline to be a little bit deeper, and I dropped it by 18 centimeters or 7 inches, and then I marked 8 centimeters or 3 inches down the back arm curve, connected them together in sort of a curved manner, not really straight, so when joined together along the center back, you have a nice swoop curve along the back of the dress. So next up, I'm just redefining our back arm curve like we did for the front, coming in by 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. So we have a new back arm curve for the dress. Just remember to transfer your back arm curve notches as well, because those will become crucial when you're joining pieces together. So now that we have the first stage of our plan done, this is what the front as well as the back looks like. This is the point where if you want to sort of change anything, you can do so. If you want to make your neckline a sweetheart neckline or round or like a cowl neckline, you have the freedom to do so. But I'm just going to stick to the layout that we have for now and trace out the panels I'll be needing. So next up, to accommodate that front sort of bust that we added, I'm going to be adding an additional 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch to the hem of the front, because when you stitch up that bust that, you're going to lose some measurements. So to ensure that doesn't happen, I just added that extra bit to the bottom. So I'm going to get myself some fresh pattern paper and we're going to be tracing out the patterns that we're actually going to be working with. So I've traced out my main front, which looks like this. I transferred my hip, bust and waistlines as well as that bust dart. The crucial thing here is just remember to add your 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around, and because I don't want a seam on the center front, I am going to be cutting that on the fold. And because it's a bias cut dress, you'll be cutting this pattern on a bias, meaning on a 45-degree angle, sort of not your normal straight, but you fold the fabric in such a way that you get 45 degrees and you place your pattern along that edge. I'll explain this more when we're actually cutting later on in this video. So I went ahead to trace out my back, added my hem and seam allowances, as well as my notched point and also my 45-degree bias grain. The fabric I'm working with in this video is this beautiful yellow and black chiffon print designed by Yemzi. I collaborated with her for a previous video, and she's a talented Nigerian British designer who makes her own prints and works with very beautiful sort of colors and feel. So I'm going to be working with that for this video, and as you can see, I folded my fabric 45 degrees off the normal grain. I've pinned on my front because I want my front to be on the fold. I've pinned it along the folded edge like so. Just be careful when pinning delicate fabrics and cutting as well, because if you move the pattern ever so slightly, that error is going to carry on into when you have to sew, and it just sort of ruins the fit and feel of your dress. So I'm going in carefully to cut out the rest of my front along the arm curve, side and bottom as well. And just remember to cut your notches, especially for the bust point, the waistline and the hip, because this fabric is very soft and it moves really easily. These notches are going to become very crucial when it's time to join pieces together. So I went ahead to cut out my back panels as well as my lining pieces too. For my lining, I just made them about 3 inches or 8 centimeters shorter than the main dress. Everything else was the same. I just made them a little bit shorter so they don't show from the outside of the dress. I have my back pieces here like so, as well as my main front. As you can see, this fabric moves so beautifully. It's very fluid, very soft. So I'm looking forward to how this dress will turn out. So up for sewing, the first thing we're going to be sewing is our bust dart, and I'm taking my front pattern like so, and I'm going to be transferring my dart point from the pattern onto the fabric. Now I'm doing this on the wrong side of the material because I'm going to be marking with chalk, and then I'm going to be taking out that pin as well as the paper, and then I'm going to find the notches for my dart, pin it together along the side, and then connect it to the chalk that we just marked for that sort of that point. So once we have that pinned, I'm going to go ahead and pin the other side, and we're going to be stitching up the dart for the front of the dress. So for sewing this type of fabric, you have to use a fine needle, which is a little bit thinner than the normal needles you use, and just ensure you test a little bit of the fabric to get the tension right, so you don't end up like ruining your main dress. So I went ahead to pin my lining front bust darts as well, and because this lining is a little bit more stable compared to the chiffon, I'm sewing with a normal straight stitch, remembering to do my back stitch and at the beginning and at the end of my darts to secure that seam. So now that we've sewn our bust dart, I went ahead to give it a quick press to relax the seams, and I'm going to be joining the side seams of the front to the back. Now, pinning this fabric was a real test of human patience, because if you even sneeze, the fabric moves. So don't just rush it at all. Honestly, if you're working with any silky, soft, fluid fabric, just take your time, listen to some cool music, and pin your pieces together, because once you have them pinned, you know they sort of stay put when you have to sew it up. So now I'm going to sew up my side seams, joining my front to my back. I'm sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance using a normal straight stitch. And remember, when you get to the point where your bust dart is, the bust dart is meant to point downwards along the side seam. So I'm just going in to finish the rest of that seam before going ahead to pin up my lining pieces as well, joining the side seam of the front to the back, as well as that center back seam of the lining. So we'll have one piece of the dress to fit onto the other piece as well. So I'm just sewing up my side seam, center back as well for my lining, all the way from the beginning to the end, and I'm going to go ahead and overlock all my seams. So this is optional if you decide to work with a French seam, which will conceal all raw edges, but because I didn't have the time as well as the energy, I'm just going to go ahead and overlock my seams. But if you want to like finish your garments beautifully when working with silk and chiffon, you can opt for using a French seam. So now that I have my lining all done, all steamed, all overlocked, as well as my main dress piece, we're going to be joining them together first along the neckline. So I've just pushed my lining through the middle, and I'm going to be matching both sort of dresses along the neckline, so along the arm curve, the front and the back, and just secure them in place with some pins, because I'm just going to go in and do like a really sort of rough stitch to hold both of these pieces together before going ahead to add our bias tape as well as our straps. So I'm just going to quickly stitch this up on my machine, sewing on a 0.5 centimeter seam allowance, holding my chiffon dress to the lining along the neckline, so we know that this entire dress is coming together and is going to stay joined and sort of fixed along the neck and the arm curve as well. So now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and grab some bias tape. I ended up using about 3 meters, and I got this wide type that feels like satin and is 1 inch sort of wide when it's folded. So I'm going to stake one end, and I'm going to be pinning on the inner side of the neckline. This is for the front, and I'm just going to fold up one side of the bias tape and pin along the inside of the front neckline like so. So you can space your pin out as much as you want to, or you can just sew in straight away if you're comfortable stitching bias tape onto garments. So I went ahead to pin the back neckline as well, opening up the bias tape and pinning on the inside, and I'm going to be taking this to my machine, and I'm going to be sewing this sort of first inner side first before going ahead to turn it over and cover up that neckline seam. So now I'm sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, starting with the front, remembering to do my back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then when I get all the way to the end, just ease this out, and this is what it should look like. So now that we've stitched up our front, we're going to be turning the rest of the bias tape to cover up the raw edge, or sort of the stitch that we just did. So you can go ahead and take this straight away to your machine and sew, or you can put a few pins so you have this already pre-folded and ready to sew. And because the neckline is a V neckline, we'll be adjusting the midpoint later on, so it actually has that pointed V tip along the front. So when this is all pinned up, I'm going to be sewing a very close edge stitch to the bottom side of the bias tape on my machine. I'm just using a normal straight stitch on regular tension, and because this layer is a little bit thick, you can just sew at a pace that's comfortable for you. So remember, when you get to sort of the midpoint, to just lift up your footer and turn the machine to sew the other side of the front and just close off this side of the front neckline. So once that is all done, this is what it should look like. It's still a little bit round. I want it to have that sort of typical V shape. So I'm going to fold this in half, and I'm going to tuck this under my machine and sew a little triangle right at the middle of the front neckline to just ensure that my V neckline is still like what I want it to be. So I'm really going to start from the bottom of the bias tape edge and sew all the way to the top. I just sewed for about 1 centimeter like width at the top, so it's not too wide, so it looks nice and natural, and it just lay flat after I've steamed this up. So this is what the neckline looks like, and I'm fairly happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and work on the back, sewing in the bias tape first on the inner side and then turn it over to conceal the seam or the stitch, and then sew it up again using a net stitch on the outer side of the dress. So we have both front and back necklines covered up with this black satin bias tape. Now moving on to attaching the straps for this dress, you need to cut 2 bias tapes that measure 114 centimeters or 45 inches each. You need 2 of this, 1 to go on each side. I think that's why I ended up using so much bias tape. So the first thing you need to do is just open up your first arm curve and find the middle point for the arm curve as well as the middle for this first bias tape, and pin them together on the inside. So you fold the bias tape open like we did for the neckline, and you pin that midpoint together, and then you just pin up the rest of the bias tape into the front and the back arm curve. The way we're going to do this, we're going to be stitching up the bias tape first on this inside layer like this, and then we're going to be turning it over like we did with the neckline. So I went ahead to pin up the other side for the dress, and we're going to be stitching that up as well. And I'm going to be sewing this on the inner side on the 1 centimeter seam allowance, joining this part of the bias tape to this side of the dress or this particular arm curve. So once you get to the end, just remember to do your trusty old back stitch to secure that seam, and then we're going to be sewing the bias tape close. So you can start from front or from back, it doesn't really matter, but you are going to be sewing this close until you get to the point where the arm curve is, and then you seal that arm curve close. Just remember to stitch this on the right side of the dress so you have control over where the stitch goes and how it looks, because this is sort of the outside of your dress. So as you sew, just remember to turn, because you'll be sewing around that curved sort of armhole or place, and then when you get to the other side, you just stitch up the other end of the bias tape close. So you do that for the left and for the right hand side, and those will become the straps that you tie up as a bow to make sort of the shoulder of your dress. This was a method I had to come up with because I had a hard time finding, the adjustable bra strap things, and I didn't really have time to sort of order online or go into shops. So this is a quick method you can use to make straps and sort of have your dress close up on the top of your shoulder. The last step would be to fold the hem of your dress by a tiny 0.5 hem stitch. I decided to go for this really tiny pin tuck hem instead of the wide one I wanted because of the nature of the fabric. So this, you just fold your fabric twice along the hem, but you fold it ever so slightly so it looks really tiny and slim, because by the time you press this nice and flat, it just looks right on the bottom of your dress. So I'm going to do this for just the outer layer, and I overlocked the inner hemline or the lining hemline. So this is the finished dress. It actually turned out really, really nice. I think it's something that I would really appreciate when I go away on holiday, because this paired with some sandals or some flip-flops, walking along the beach or going or being a tourist would be something that I would really enjoy. I just have to say, be careful of the choice of fabric you use for your lining. Don't just use anything that has a lot of static or stickiness. It will just go against your body and wouldn't really look or feel comfortable. Special thanks to Yemzi for providing the chiffon I used in this video. There will be a link down below for anyone who is interested in checking out the material and the rest of Yemzi's collection. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video all the same. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, comment all of your thoughts, ideas and suggestions down below, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Here, this is like a 3D lace. Ooh, this is so cool. Wow, this is actually really cool. So this is like a 3D lace. Let me just show you what this first one looks like. It has bits of material just sticking out like this, and there are two